Every smartphone on Earth, every AI model running right now, every modern weapons system, every hospital ventilator, every car built after 2010. All of them depend on chips made in one place, a single company, a single island, 35,000 square kilometers, sitting 180 kilometers off the coast of a country that has legally committed to absorbing it, by force if necessary. You already know the tension exists. What almost nobody has thought through is what actually happens the morning after it resolves, not the war itself, the day after, what the world looks like when the shooting stops and China is standing in TSMC's Fabs. That's what today is about, because the answer to that question changes everything we think we know about AI, about global economics, about how much leverage one country can hold over the entire modern world simultaneously. I'm James Whitmore. Stay with me, because this one gets uncomfortable fast. Start with the building. TSMC's most advanced fabrication facility in Hsinchu, Taiwan produces chips at the 3-nanometer level, circuits so small that a human hair is roughly 30,000 times wider. This is not something you can replicate quickly. These factories took decades to build, require thousands of engineers trained in processes that don't exist anywhere else at scale, and operate on equipment from a Dutch company called ASML that makes machines so complex there are only a handful of people on Earth who fully understand how they work. The United States, through the CHIPS Act, has been trying to build equivalent capacity domestically since 2022. We covered the Pax Silica initiative on this channel, the US effort to build alternative supply chains through India, the Philippines, Japan. All of it real, all of it progressing, and according to the most optimistic industry projections, none of it reaches meaningful scale before 2030 at the earliest. More realistic estimates say 2035. The gap exists right now, and China knows exactly how wide it is. So here's the scenario. China takes Taiwan. The military operation, however long it takes, ends. Chinese soldiers are standing in TSMC's facilities. What does China actually do with that? The first thing to understand is that China faces an immediate contradiction it has no clean solution to. TSMC's manufacturing capability is the most valuable single industrial asset in the world. But it only works because of a global ecosystem, equipment from ASML, chemicals from Japan and the US, software from American companies, engineers trained in an open academic environment that China's own system has struggled to replicate. Destroy that ecosystem through military action or sanctions, and the fabs don't work. Keep it running, and China is suddenly dependent on continued cooperation from the countries it just went to war against. This is why military planners in both Taipei and Washington have discussed what's sometimes called the scorched earth option. The idea, and TSMC's chairman Morris Chang has alluded to this, is that if a Chinese takeover becomes inevitable, the fabs are rendered non-functional before they can be seized, not destroyed necessarily, but calibrated so that the specific process knowledge, the equipment configurations, the software, all of it stops working in ways that would take years to reverse. China would hold the buildings, it wouldn't hold the capability. That's the optimistic scenario for the West. Now here's the pessimistic one. If China successfully takes Taiwan with the facilities intact, which is a real possibility in a rapid military operation designed precisely to outpace any demolition protocol, it holds something genuinely unprecedented, not just a strategic territory, the manufacturing choke point for the entire global technology supply chain. Every American AI company, every defense contractor, every consumer electronics manufacturer that currently depends on TSMC would face an immediate existential question. Do you continue buying chips from a facility now controlled by a government that is simultaneously under maximum economic sanctions from your own government? Can you? Legally, commercially, politically? The answer almost certainly is no, which means the global supply of advanced chips essentially pauses. And here's where the Layer 3 stakes become impossible to ignore. The AI industry, the thing that every major technology company, every government, every military force is currently betting its future on, runs on advanced chips. The frontier AI models that are right now reshaping medicine, law, finance, and warfare require chips that only TSMC produces at the necessary scale. If those chips stop flowing to American labs, the AI race doesn't slow down. It stops. The United States doesn't lose a lead, it loses the road. That's not abstract. That's what every senior technologist and defense strategist in Washington is quietly working backward from right now. The Taiwan question isn't fundamentally about Taiwan. It's about who controls the infrastructure that the 21st century runs on. If this is the kind of analysis you want every week, the real stakes underneath the headlines, subscribing to the channel takes about 2 seconds and genuinely helps more people find it. And hit like if this is landing, because it helps the algorithm surface this to people who need to hear it. Now, China's own position in this scenario is more complicated than it looks from the outside. And this is the part that most coverage gets wrong. China needs TSMC too. Right now, today, China's most advanced domestic chip, produced by SMIC, lags behind TSMC's best process by approximately 2 to 3 generations. That gap represents years of AI and military development. Chinese tech companies, including Huawei, are building around it, but the workarounds are expensive, slow, and limited in scale. A fully functional TSMC under Chinese control would be transformative for China's domestic AI development in ways that nothing else could match. But here's the paradox. The moment China takes Taiwan, every major democratic government on Earth imposes maximum sanctions on Chinese technology. The equipment suppliers, ASML, Applied Materials, Lam Research, stop servicing the Fabs. The software licenses stop, the spare parts stop, the engineers stop coming. China would own the world's most advanced semiconductor facility and simultaneously lose access to everything required to keep it running at its current capability. Unless, and this is the scenario that keeps Western planners up at night, China has spent the intervening years quietly building domestic alternatives to each of those dependencies. The lithography equipment, the chemicals, the process software. None of it at TSMC's level yet, but enough to keep a captured facility running in degraded form. The investments China has been making in its semiconductor industry since 2020 are not just about building domestic capability from scratch. They're about reducing the number of external inputs required to sustain advanced manufacturing if external cooperation disappears. That's a different goal, and it's one that's much harder to observe and assess from the outside. The third dimension of the morning after scenario is the global economic shock. Taiwan's economy is approximately 3.5% of global GDP, but its role in the technology supply chain is disproportionate to that number by an order of magnitude. The IMF has modeled the economic impact of a Taiwan conflict at somewhere between 10 and 16% of global GDP in the first year, roughly 2 to 3 times the impact of the 2008 financial crisis. Every country with a technology-dependent economy takes a hit simultaneously, which is to say, every country. This is why the Taiwan question is not really a bilateral issue between China and the United States. It's a question every government on Earth has a stake in, including countries that have no formal alliance with either side. India's tech sector, South Korea's electronics industry, Germany's automotive manufacturing, Japan's precision engineering. Every one of them runs on chips that flow through Taiwan, and this mutual dependence is ultimately why the scenario has not yet occurred. Not because China lacks the military capability, analysts debate this, but acknowledge China's military modernization has been substantial. And not because American deterrence is absolute, it isn't. But because the economic consequences of triggering a chip supply collapse are severe enough to give even the most hawkish Chinese military planner pause. You don't gain control of the global technology supply chain by destroying the conditions that make it valuable. The morning after China takes Taiwan isn't a morning of Chinese triumph. It's a morning of extraordinary complexity, an immediate economic crisis of global proportions, an operational headache for the facilities themselves, and the beginning of a decade-long restructuring of the entire global technology order that reshapes every country's development trajectory. That's the scenario the world is managing around right now. The CHIPS Act, Pax Silica, the pressure on ASML to stop selling certain equipment to China, the supermicro smuggling case we covered on this channel. All of it is policy built in response to this specific morning after calculation. The people making these decisions know what the day after looks like, and they're not willing to let it arrive. Whether that's enough, whether deterrence and economic interdependence hold indefinitely, or whether some combination of miscalculation, domestic pressure, and geopolitical crisis eventually creates the conditions for the scenario to unfold, is the most important open question in global security right now. What I can tell you is that the answer won't be determined by military posture alone. It'll be determined by whether the world builds enough redundancy into the chip supply chain before the window closes, and whether the window closes before the redundancy is built. That race is happening right now, and its outcome will be felt by everyone. This is James Whitmore. The Taiwan story is ongoing. I'll be back when it moves. Subscribe so you're there when it does.